All right, so here's the deal. Maya and I had been engaged for 11 months, and we had exactly $22,000 saved for the wedding. Not extravagant enough if we were careful. Crystal Pines Events showed up at the top of a search for outdoor venues in our county, and we booked a Saturday tour in early March. The coordinator's name was Dominic Walsh. Tall, unhurried, wearing a linen shirt like a man who had nowhere urgent to be. He walked the property the way someone does when they're proud of what they've built. String lights over a flagstone courtyard, a restored barn that seated 120, a full catering kitchen with commercial refrigeration. He had answers for everything. Catering minimums, load-in windows, setup crew availability. He remembered Maya's name without checking his notes. Maya picked up the contract before we left and read it in the car. She circled 2 things in pencil. First, the deposit was non-refundable under all circumstances. No exception clause, no force majeure provision, nothing about cancellation on their end. Second, the listed business address was a suite number inside a shared office building. No physical space of their own. I told her that was just how event companies operated these days. She said okay and put the contract in her bag. Pencil mark still on it. The deposit was $14,000, 63% of our entire wedding budget. I wired it on a Monday morning. By Wednesday, Dominic had sent a welcome email with a planning timeline and a preferred vendor list. Photographer, florist, DJ, linen rental. Everything looked exactly as it should. I want to say I had a bad feeling. I didn't. The venue was beautiful, the price was slightly lower than 3 other places we toured, and Dominic had been smooth in the way that makes skepticism feel rude. What I didn't do was read the reviews carefully. I saw 4.8 stars, skimmed the top responses, and stopped. If I had scrolled to the second page, I would have found 2 posts from other couples describing the venue as increasingly unresponsive as the event date got close. I didn't scroll. We were too happy to go looking for problems. Maya had flagged 2 things in that contract, and I had talked her out of both of them. 3 months later, I'd learned that welcome email was the last thing Dominic Walsh ever sent us. At the time, I just thought we were done with the hard part. 32 days before the wedding, our venue coordinator stopped responding. At first, I didn't read it as anything serious. Dominic had always been slightly slow on email, a day or 2 here and there, and we were in early May, which I assumed was peak season for a working venue. I sent a follow-up on Tuesday, then another on Thursday. Nothing. On Friday, Maya noticed the Crystal Pines Instagram had gone private. Not deleted, private. You could still see the account name, but none of the photos, none of the tagged posts. None of the vendor reels we'd spent 3 months scrolling through. She showed me and I said, maybe it was a technical glitch. She didn't say anything back. I called the main business number Saturday morning. It rang 4 times and went to voicemail. I left a message. I called again Sunday. Same voicemail. Monday, I tried the emergency contact listed in our contract, a cell number Dominic had given us in January. It rang once and gave me a fast, busy signal. Not voicemail, not a disconnected message. Just nothing. That's when I drove to the venue. The address on the contract was a 40-minute drive. I pulled up to a gravel lot at the end of a private road, and the place looked exactly like I remembered. The flagstone courtyard, the barn doors, the string lights still looped between the posts. But the main building was dark, no cars. The front door had a padlock on it that I was certain had not been there in March. I walked around the perimeter. I pressed my face against a side window. Tables still inside, folded. Chairs still stacked, like someone had just stopped showing up. I called Maya from the parking lot. She said she was going to look some things up and ask me to come home. Her voice was steady in the way it gets when she's already 3 steps ahead of a problem and doesn't want to alarm you until she knows more. We had 32 days. We had $14,000 sitting somewhere that wasn't a venue anymore. And we had a wedding guest list that still thought everything was fine. The first call I made Monday morning was to the bank. The deposit had been wired directly to Crystal Pines Events, LLC. Not charged to a card, not paid through a platform. Wire transfer. The woman on the phone was genuinely sympathetic and absolutely useless. Wire transfers don't have chargeback protection. The money had cleared in March and settled in their account. There was no dispute process, no hold, no reversal mechanism. You'd need to take that up with the business directly, she said. I explained that the business appeared to not exist anymore. She said I was welcome to file a fraud report, but that wouldn't recover the funds. I filed the fraud report anyway. Then I filed a police report at the non-emergency line. The officer who took it was also sympathetic. He told me it sounded like a civil matter. He said I should speak with an attorney. Meanwhile, Maya had found a Facebook group. It had been created 4 days earlier by a woman named Terry, a bride whose June 14th wedding had been booked at Crystal Pines. Terry had driven to the venue the same Saturday I had. Her post had 17 comments when Maya found it. By that evening, it had 41, 3 more couples with May dates, 1 couple with a late April booking who had already missed their event entirely. Total deposits across the group, somewhere north north of $90,000. Walsh's personal name started appearing in the comments. People had found him on LinkedIn. He was still active on the platform, last seen 2 days ago, location listed as the metro area. I contacted our florist, our photographer, our DJ, all of whom we'd booked through Crystal Pines' preferred vendor referrals. The florist said Crystal Pines owed her 2 outstanding invoices from prior events, and she'd been trying to reach Dominic for 6 weeks. 6 weeks. While we were still getting welcome emails and planning timelines, Walsh had already stopped paying his own vendors. 28 days left, no venue, no deposit, and a fraud scheme that had apparently been running long enough to leave a trail. We just hadn't known where to look yet. 3 days into the Facebook group, Terry posted something that changed the shape of everything. She'd been doing her own digging and had found a filing in the state business registry. 2 years before Crystal Pines Events LLC was incorporated, a company called Lakewood Estate Weddings LLC had been registered under the same owner name, Dominic P. Walsh. It had operated for 14 months before being quietly dissolved. Terry had also found 4 complaints in a local consumer affairs database from that period, all from couples who said Lakewood Estate had gone dark weeks before their events. The amounts ranged from $8,000 to $11,000. None of the complaints listed a resolution. Nobody had apparently followed through. Same person, same scheme, same timing. Just a different LLC name and a different venue property. Walsh had done this before, walked away clean, and then built a new operation with a nicer website and better photography and a 4.8-star average that had never had time to accumulate the honest reviews. I read Terry's post at the kitchen table and felt something shift from panic to something colder. Maya was sitting across from me reading the same thread on her phone. I watched her expression and couldn't quite place it. Not surprise, more like recognition. She set the phone down and said, "I think I know who to call." I asked her what she meant. She told me she'd spent 3 years before her current job working as a consumer protection investigator for the state attorney general's office. Not general legal work, specifically consumer fraud. Her team had handled cases exactly like this one. Small businesses using LLC structures to run deposit scams, dissolve, and restart under new names before the complaints caught up. She said she still knew people in that division. She said the Lakewood Estate paper trail was exactly the kind of documented pattern their office could move on quickly, especially with a current active fraud in progress. I had known Maya worked in some kind of legal compliance before switching jobs 2 years ago. I had never asked for specifics. She had never offered them. "Why didn't you say this when the Instagram went private?" I asked. "Because I didn't know if it was anything yet," she said. "Now it is." Maya called her former supervisor at the AG's Consumer Protection Division the next morning. I heard one side of the conversation from the hallway. She wasn't asking for a favor. She was briefing someone on a case. She used phrases like documented pattern across 2 LLC entities, and active fraud in progress, and aggregate victim exposure above 90,000. She had Terry's registry findings in front of her, our wire transfer confirmation, the Facebook group's compiled list of affected couples, and both LLC filing numbers pulled from the state database the night before. The call lasted 19 minutes. When she came out, she said her contact was going to triage it, and that the key question was whether an emergency asset preservation motion made sense given what they had. She explained what that meant. If the office filed quickly enough and the evidence threshold was met, a court could freeze Walsh's business accounts before he had a chance to drain them or transfer them out of reach. It wasn't guaranteed. It depended on what was still in those accounts. We didn't know what was in those accounts. We only knew that the deposits from 5 couples had gone in, and Walsh was still showing as active on LinkedIn 2 counties away. Maya sent everything she had to her contact that afternoon. 48 hours later, she got a call back. The office had reviewed the Lakewood Estate complaint history, cross-referenced it with Crystal Pines' LLC registration, confirmed Walsh's name on both, and was opening a formal investigation. The emergency asset preservation request had been submitted to a judge the same morning. That evening, she got one more message. The motion had been granted. Crystal Pines Events, LLC's business accounts were frozen pending investigation. Walsh didn't know yet. I sat with that for a moment. The man who had taken our $14,000, who had walked away clean once before, who had run a new version of the same scheme on 6 couples. His accounts were frozen and he hadn't been told. He was somewhere in the metro area, probably waiting for the noise to die down the way it had with Lakewood. We still had no venue. We had 24 days. But something had changed. On day 5 after the asset freeze, Dominic Walsh resurfaced. Not to apologize, not to explain. He sent a cease and desist letter, or something formatted like one, to 5 of the couples in Terry's group, including us. The letter said that we had made false and defamatory statements about Crystal Pines events in a public online forum, that the business was experiencing temporary cash flow difficulties common to the post-COVID events industry, and that continued online commentary would result in legal action for damages. He signed it himself. No attorney letterhead. Terry posted it to the group within an hour of receiving it. The comments hit 60 before I finished reading it. Someone with a law background pointed out that temporary cash flow difficulties is not a defense to wire fraud. Someone else noted that a self-authored cease and desist has no legal force. Maya read it at the table and said, almost to herself, "He thinks this is still recoverable." She forwarded it to her contact at the AG's office that same afternoon. The following morning, a staff attorney from the Consumer Protection Division called Walsh directly. I don't know exactly what was said. What I know is that Walsh did not send any further communications to anyone in the group after that call. His LinkedIn profile went private the same day. By the end of that week, the AG's office had issued a formal civil complaint. A court had approved an order requiring restitution from the frozen assets, and Walsh was notified that a criminal fraud referral was being prepared based on the Lakewood estate pattern. 3 of the original Lakewood couples, once they heard about the active case, submitted their own complaints for the record. That left us 20 days out with no venue and a wedding that was still happening. We spent 4 evenings calling every venue within 40 miles. Most were booked. 2 had availability, but wanted a deposit we couldn't afford on top of recovering ours. We finally found a small municipal park with a covered pavilion, a capacity of 80, and a rental fee of $400. We cut the guest list. We changed the flowers. We moved the ceremony from late afternoon to morning so the light would be better. We signed the pavilion agreement that evening. The restitution from the frozen accounts hadn't cleared. We didn't know if it would arrive before the wedding date or how much we'd actually get back. 20 days out, still waiting. We got married on a Saturday morning in late May in a covered pavilion in a municipal park with 80 people instead of 112, and grocery store flowers Maya had arranged herself the night before. The restitution order had come through 4 days before the wedding. The AG's office had recovered $11,200 from Crystal Pines' frozen accounts. Not the full $14,000, but enough to cover the backup venue, the vendors who were willing to transfer their contracts, and a little left over. The gap we absorbed. It didn't feel good, but it felt fair, which was different. Dominic Walsh did not attend the wedding. He was formally charged with wire fraud and deceptive business practices 6 weeks later. The Lakewood Estate complaint record added 2 additional counts. His attorney, once he acquired one, entered a not guilty plea. The case was still moving through the courts when I wrote this up, which is why I'm keeping some details vague. What I can say is that he did not walk away clean a second time. Terry's group dissolved naturally after the restitution process closed. She sent one last post thanking everyone who had submitted documentation. She said her own wedding had been moved to a backyard ceremony, that it had been the best day of her life, and that she no longer believed venue aesthetics had anything to do with how a wedding turned out. I believed her. As for Maya, she went back to her current job the Monday after the honeymoon, the one that has nothing to do with consumer fraud investigations. She's good at what she does now, but I've seen what she's like when she has a documented pattern in front of her and knows exactly who to call. I don't fully understand how I spent 11 months engaged to that person without understanding what I was dealing with. The park pavilion was pretty in the morning light. The photos looked like something we would have planned on purpose. I didn't feel like I'd won something. I felt like something that had gone badly wrong had been put right, mostly, and that we'd gotten married in the middle of it, which turned out to be the part that mattered. I don't have a lesson. I just know that I scroll to the second page of reviews now. If this story hit, subscribe to Retro Reddit Dude. New stories every day. Like if you think Walsh should have read the contract more carefully than I did.